So welcome to this episode of Model Thinkers Interviews, and today we've got Adrienne Tan from Brainmates. And I first met Adrienne many years ago now when we needed someone to support us teaching very experienced product managers for a very large telco to understand what a product lifecycle was and other aspects of product management. And we got Adrienne in to help, and she was wonderful there. So I'm really keen to really tap into her understanding of what product managers do and the mental models that she uses as well. So Adrienne, I'd love to throw over to you and just get you to introduce yourself. Like what do you do? What does Brainmates do?
Hello, thank you for having me firstly. What does Brainmates do? That's a really great question. We've been in product management since 2004. I left my full-time job as a group product manager for a company at that stage called Oster. And I thought I'd love to be able to take my craft and offer it to other types of businesses. So the Brainmates does a few things. We actually do product management for other companies. So we step in and we do hands-on, on-tap product management. So we help companies build products and services. We teach people how to do product management. And we also change how product management is done in businesses. And that involves a lot of, development of playbooks, implementation of new practices and processes, changing the way people think and behave in the product management function.
Fantastic. Well, we're throwing around the term a lot already, product management, and obviously a lot of people will already know what that is, but there will also be a lot of people who have heard it as a buzzword. I've just in one engagement I've got at the moment, it's actually being identified as a key capability area for across the board. So, and people are look like blinking, saying, what is that? So tell us, what is a product manager?
I'll start. Firstly, I have to say that product management is not a new discipline. It's been around since the 1930s, and it originated from fast-moving consumer goods when a guy called Neil McElroy wanted to differentiate the Camay soap from other soaps. And so this concept of differentiation, how do I talk about my product differently to other products in the market, or at that point it was other soaps in the market, how do I stand out? And this concept of creating value and differentiation for our customers emerged a long time ago. It's since evolved. I think the guy that started, Neil, consulted to Hewlett-Packard, and as soon as it kind of entered the tech space in the 80s, I think it started to change and morph and become, I guess, more standardized. And recently, you see the proliferation of technology and products being developed so quickly that product management is a key function in many businesses. Even if you don't have a proper, department in your business, you're doing product management, whether you knowingly or unwittingly do it. And of course, if you knowingly do it, then you're going to put more thought and consideration around it and do it better. If you're putting something to market, if you're selling something, call it a product or a service, even if you don't have a product manager, you're doing and performing product management. Having a product management function means that you have teams of people who specialize in identifying, discovering, customer problems, designing solutions that solve those problems, and delivering value to customers as well as some benefit to your business. Now, there's product management in all sorts of organizations these days, from not-for-profit businesses to government departments. There's a product manager there trying to conceive new products and services that offer, customers, consumers, business customers, some sort of value.
Mm. That's interesting. I didn't know that background, because I always saw product management in my ignorance as almost like driven by design and that customer-centric design. But from that soap story, are you saying it almost came more from the marketing side than the design side? And would you say it's
Yes.
almost like a bit of a bridge now I kind of see it more on the design side, but I guess it flows into the marketing side, doesn't it?
I don't see any of it as being siloed.
Yep.
These days, every function in an organization is trying to create some sort of value, is trying to kind of talk about, promote, discuss, share the value that they've created. I think the tools that we use are pretty similar. It's kind of funny when you go into a marketing department or when you go into design or engineering, you'll start to see, and here's why I guess, you know, your discussion's really important, that we're all using common models, common tools to try and figure out who our customers are, what problems are they having, how will they react if, you know, we position it this way, how much will they pay for it, how do we differentiate ourselves from the competitors. You know, marketing, design, product people, we're all trying to do the same thing, just manifest in different ways.
I think that's really fascinating, because one of the things that Model Thinkers tries to do is really look for the cross-disciplinary knowledge that can be used in different contexts. But it sounds, the way you're describing it, I hadn't really thought of this way before. Product managers are almost inherently quite cross-disciplinary, yeah?
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we are.
Yeah.
We need to, you know, we need to understand finance, because we can't put out a product there that's going to make us, you know, lose money or lose shareholders or lose eyeballs or lose voters or whoever, you know, whatever that loss might be. We need to always try and figure out how to gain it. We have to understand, you know, customer, where the designers talk about it all the time, but hey, marketing has to understand the customer. So there's product has to understand. So does sales. Everybody has to understand our customers. It's just that we have very different lens of what that customer, you know, we look at the customer slightly differently. It's like that elephant, right? You might touch the tail and it's, you know, you feel like it's a tail and you think that's what the elephant is, but somebody else touches the trunk and they think that's what the elephant is. Our job as product managers is to see the whole elephant and to bring together, you know, everybody's kind of in very important contributions and thinking to make sure that we service our customers as well as our business.
Fantastic. So that holistic view, which is really delivering value to the customer, yeah? So tell me, what a typical product manager, not that there is a typical product manager, but commonly,
that's a really hard thing to do.
It is really hard. But yeah, I know you come, you know, you run all these conferences, you do all these speaking gigs, and you have a lot of work with product managers. What are the typical mental models that a lot of product managers would be going to in their toolbox?
Look, the mental model that we say that every product person should have is the idea that you need to think about problems before solutions. And if you unpick all the canvases out there, you'll see that that's the foundation of all those canvases. What problems are we trying to solve before we consider the solution? Because typically what we love to do as humans is to make stuff. And we hope that if we make the product, customers will come. But in product management, the foundational kind of principle or, you know, a mental model to abide by is to always think about who is our customer and what problem is it that they have before we start to tinker around with solutions.
It's interesting. We were just featuring framestorming. I'm not sure if you've come across that one, which is that whole focusing on, like, you know, framestorm before your brainstorm, which is like being obsessive about the question, which is a really popular one. I love
that.
Yeah. But I imagine that also speaks a lot to the design thinking process then. Is that something that's quite commonly used within the...
Absolutely. You can see they spend a lot of time doing, you know, customer research, whether they're in the field, whether they're, you know, observing from afar, wherever they might be, they're always trying to understand people and context and problems. And once we discover, you know, that we have, and there are different sizes of problems, you know, once we discover that kind of problem, whether it's something that the market inherently doesn't have, or an individual having difficulty, you know, operating something, there's solutions there. Our job, once we've discovered that, is to find the solutions then to solve those problems. Enable people to complete the task, achieve their goals.
So tell me, what are the, now talking about your experience and your approach specifically, what sort of mental models do you use regularly in the work that you do?
And it's funny because they're generally not very producty, but
Yeah,
you know what? That's what I love about models. You can apply it to pretty much any aspect or situation that you're in.
that's what
And
we
some
love
of,
about
I
mental
mean,
models too.
yeah, I know. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the second law of thermodynamics. My husband's an engineer, and I used to study, I'm not an engineer, I'm an economist.
Yeah, right.
And he used to study, engineering, and I would read the books with him. Now, the second law of thermodynamics is all around entropy, and
Yep.
that's where things start to decay. So there's a natural kind of that most systems have. You build a system, you build a framework, you build a product, and you think, right, I'm done. But the fact is, the second law of thermodynamics says that it starts to break down.
Right.
And so your job as product people is to always iterate, always improve, change, fix, align. So there's
Mm.
always energy that you need to input into all of this to make sure that systems and products constantly solve problems, constantly deliver value. So as
And
soon
so,
as you step away,
yep.
well, then things start to decay. And
Mm.
this is really important for a product manager because a lot of people spend a lot of time developing products and launching it and then thinking, oh, look, my job here is done, so let me
Mm.
walk away. When in actual fact, your job is only just starting.
Mm.
For
So
so
you
many
see that as
reasons.
so that sounds like a big fallacy that people are designing for a one-off launch, and then as opposed to what you're almost describing like a living beast that they're creating and they've got to keep tendering. It's like an
Oh, completely.
ongoing parenthood,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what
which
we
never
say. Like
ends.
product management is like a product manager is akin to a parent. You can't, you know, uh,
Do they even
give
grow
the
up and leave the house at some point? I guess that's when your exit strategy, is it?
exactly. So yes, there is that life cycle, right?
Yeah.
That there is a retirement phase. There is an exit cycle, and you just have to figure out when. You have to figure out whether you should head for exit or not.
Mm.
There's some times where you go, hey, I'm not ready for exit, so how can I, improve this product or service and get more investment out of it? But there's sometimes when you go, right, I think, that's the end of its life cycle, and it's got to be removed from the market, but you've got to actively remove from your market. You can't just let it naturally die and linger there, not even die, just linger longer.
Yeah.
All of it requires energy. When you put a process in place for your product teams, where there's a framework, there's tooling, people often get really surprised when they go, oh, we had something, it worked, but then it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because we never put energy, attention, we never gave it that love.
Yeah.
And when we start to do that, then it'll only, it'll get better.
Yep.
It'll be used. It'll get better. So
I shouldn't be
product
surprised at
processes,
this.
constant.
I'm not sure you remember the time when we worked together. It was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but that was it was actually a very large telco. These were very high paid product managers who were like you'd think would know better. And part of the challenge that we saw there was that they had this graveyard of products because they hadn't thought through. They looked at the fun, shiny bit and they didn't think about
Yeah.
what was going to happen next. And no one retired it. No one had an exit plan for it. So that was just littered with confusion for the consumer. Yeah. So is that
Yeah.
something? That was just my one experience of that, but you see that all the time. It sounds
See
like at
that
different
all the
scales.
time. It's not only in product, but because we, go in and build product capability and we put in, frameworks and, like I say, tooling and systems and processes, people often forget that they need to have people constantly nurturing those processes, tooling, and systems. The very tools that we need to make products are also important for us to constantly nurture and fix and resolve all the time.
So do you tend to mitigate that with like what, an agile kind of process or feedback loops, or what sort of models do you use to sort of support you or support people to think of this as a living, ongoing kind of process rather than a one-off?
That's a really great question. I think, look, the agile process certainly has a lot of structure, would you believe, in place to enable us to constantly talk to each other about, what's stopping us from moving forward, what are our achievements. So that cadence is something that I love in agile that must be applied everywhere else as well.
Mm.
I think it's about cadence. Once you do it once, it doesn't mean you should stop. So, your daily stand-ups,
Yeah.
your retros, all of your showcases, those are really, they're great kind of, I won't say formalities, but they're markers of time that you need to move towards, that it doesn't end. So that's, the cadence is really important. So if we
So,
always think about cadence,
yeah.
that there's never a stop and a start, there's an ongoing life cycle, I think that's a really good model to use.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'd love to, this feels like we could keep going on this one, but like, tell me, what other models are in your toolkit? What other things do you tend to draw on?
Economist opportunity cost is
Yeah.
really important. It's a really important model because we're presented with so many choices these days.
Mm.
Do I move forward and invest in this idea, or do I move forward and invest in idea B? And so as part of your thinking, you got to go, well, if I invest in idea A, what is the opportunity that I'm missing out on, the cost of not investing in idea B?
So do you use it in terms of trying to get into the customer mind in terms of them, the decision-making process? Is it partly a competitor analysis piece that you use it for, or is it more a design process?
No, it's not about design, it's about strategy.
Okay. Yep.
And it's about, like I say, we've got so many opportunities, we've got so many capabilities as organizations to really deliver, wonderful products and services to our customers.
Oh, I see. So sorry.
Out,
so you're not thinking about, you're not applying it from a customer point of view about the customer choosing a product. You're choosing it from a strategic product, like a prioritization element. Yeah.
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 That's
Right.
Opportunity
Yeah. Right.
cost between A and B.
Yep.
And look, you can always model it, but just having that discussion amongst, your stakeholders when you're trying to prioritize so many things to do these days in our businesses, it's great to go, hey, idea A, gives us this opportunity, but if we don't follow through with idea B, what opportunities have we lost?
And so do you tend to, that's interesting that you kind of use the opportunity cost, which is quite a raw, like a model which a lot of people get. I was expecting it to be a bit more geeky, but you don't necessarily have to go into the Kano model or the Rice score kind of stuff and some of those other more.
Yes, you can do that, but that's done at a feature level. Sometimes opportunity is bigger than a feature.
It's more the strategic piece that you're trying to do that.
If you wanted to create idea B, and it has 4 sides, it's this big, and within that kind of product, you'll have multiple features, and you may not know which ones to move forward with, and that's where the Rice model and the Kano in particular can help you figure out is
do you have a preference of that feature level? I'm just curious because I was kind of a bit overwhelmed by the number of different prioritization models out there.
And look, Kano requires a lot of research. Rice is something that you can apply quickly, and let me wind that back. You can use both. You can use both, and you can ask yourself, without doing any research in the Kano, when you're using Kano, how would customer A feel about X feature? How would customer A feel if they don't have this feature? So you could ask yourselves and kind of workshop, brainstorm it within your team. But Kano works well when you go out and do some surveys, some work around that.
Yep.
The Rice model, again, you can, it's a nice little prioritization activity that you can run internally with your team.
So more co-design?
It's less about co-design, but trading off which feature.
Yep.
Is feature A have more, is it more attractive to the market than feature B? And then of course you've got, the impact does it make to your goals, the confidence level and the effort it'll take to build.
So you're being very diplomatic that they all have their benefits. I'm curious to know, which one do you use, like impact versus effort? Do you use RICE? Do you use Kano? For you personally, what tends to be the one that you go to, or do you just do it more from that you use the force and use just more?
No, I don't use the force. We actually like to build out. Our own prioritization tools, based and linking it back to the company's kind of strategy and goals.
Oh, so you customize it at a more value-based level for them.
Yeah, we customize it because
Yeah, right. So does that mean you have to create almost a new framework each time?
It's not a new framework. I guess the framework is really, how attractive is this idea? How aligned is it to your strategy? The customization comes when you go, what is your strategy, and how, and so you go to the next level of detail.
Right. So let me just get this straight. Let me feed this back to you. So, and please correct me. So you tend to go with opportunity cost at a more strategic, which product kind of level. Once you're in the product, then you tend to, you respect the use of Kano and RICE, and probably lean towards Kano if you've got more time to do or more investment to do the research. Yeah. But for you personally, you tend to almost do like a more vertical thing where you're actually pulling back the strategy back into that feature level and prioritize based on that. Yeah. Is there anything else you could share about that?
It's not me personally, like it's the team.
Oh yeah, yep. I didn't mean. Yeah,
it's the team.
Yeah, I mean collective you, Brainmates and everything.
I just want to make sure that it's not just me.
No. You represent Brainmates. Yeah.
I represent Brainmates.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put that as a sticky label over the top of this interview later.
Just means there are other people involved in it. Yes, and so that's why strategy is really important.
And I guess no, you go.
You go for it.
I was going to ask. Are there particular models then that you use to? Because that's something I keep hearing in a lot of domains is how do we get more
strategy?
More business alignment, commercial acumen, rather than I talked to one company in South America. They're a massive growing digital bank, and the guy said, we're sick of creating, we've got amazing coders, they use open source, so they're attracting amazing coders, they're doing amazing work. And what it was a quote, I'm sick of doing amazing work with amazing code for the wrong thing. And it wasn't that strategic alignment. So it seems to be a big challenge at the moment.
It's massive.
So what sort of models or what sort of approaches do you use to actually get that strategic alignment?
To get strategic alignment requires, again, effort of leaders to be able to communicate down and sideways on continuously about where the company is heading. There is no model, there is no shortcut, there is no silver bullet. There is just constant communication, multiple channels, different ways, reminders. It is hard work. It is, hey, I'm sorry, why did you say that? That's not aligned to where we're heading. We thought we had discussed that we're, servicing this target market, for example, and you're talking about servicing that target market. That's not correct. Strategically, we're going down path A, not path B. Do you understand? Has something changed? Are we in agreement? And that is just pure management and leadership.
Yeah, and it's
goes
kind of
back
like
to that cadence about making sure that it's not fun, it's not sexy. It's about just making sure people are connected, that every time you hear something that's not aligned with your vision and your strategy, you go back and course correct. I heard something in my team last week where I went, hang on a minute, I'm shocked that that's, we're talking about that. I thought we were talking about this, and we're a small team. There's like 20 of us. So you can imagine 2,000 people, 200 people. So I hear these things and immediately I'm like, okay, who's that person's manager? What's going on there? Do I need to step in and find out, what the message is being spoken about?
Yeah.
What's the message?
It's actually that shared mental model conversation, but I'm also interested in too, relating back to what you said, where you were talking about products not being set and forget, I imagine the strategy isn't set and forget either, and it's like that
Oh
constant.
no.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We have a strategy, but a strategy shouldn't be in a drawer. It should be made verbal each time. I like to remind people about it every week. I call myself the Chief Monotonous Officer. CMO, very cute.
Because you feel like just
Because
reminding the
people
same
don't retain
fundamentals.
everything.
Yep.
Reminding the same message. People don't remember everything. People might have heard it this way, might have heard it a different way. People might have tuned out. So
Yep.
it's a constant reminder. And you might think, oh gosh, that's so boring, because I actually am putting together a strategy deck again. The same one, but making it look a little bit more updated for our quarterly company get together. And it's like, oh, it feels really repetitive, but I can bet you that people would have heard something different, visualize something different. And so my job is to constantly reiterate the same message over and over again.
Fair enough. Now,
and so should product people.
Yeah. Now, related to that, one of the models that you hear a lot around product management circles is value proposition and the various versions of value proposition. Tell me about your take on value proposition, how you use it, where it fits in.
Oh my God, it is the core of any product. And it goes back to who's your customer and what problem are you solving for them? What pain are they feeling? And how your solution could remove the pain, resolve the challenge, give them that, and that pain could be emotional or functional or social, or it could be anything. And so you've got to, I guess, uncover that. And that's what the value is, right? Because the value is, the value proposition is, how is your product service solving that person market's problem? And the differentiation then is, how are you doing it better or differently than the competitors? So you've got the value proposition and then the positioning statement.
Right, and the positioning statement is about the point of difference with your marketplace. And so just focusing on that value proposition, what do you see, like even when you described it, that you tended to focus on the loss rather than the gains, which is interesting because I read a lot of that and I imagine that's about loss aversion, people feeling loss more than gains. But is that something that
it's not about
important?
Loss, it's about something that's really important to me that I can't achieve right now.
So frustration, is it?
My product will bridge that gap. You will get more from my product because I'm solving something that you find very important that you can't solve right now.
Okay. So what do you see?
I know the word problem.
Yeah.
The word problem doesn't sit well with lots of people. But people don't really care about your product, and this is not my quote, but people only care about how you're solving their problems. And of course, once you solve their problems, there are benefits, right? I feel happy, elated. I feel like I belong. I've reached nirvana.
So it's got a happy bit at the end. So what are the challenges when you work with people around value proposition? What do people often get wrong?
People don't go deep enough. People stay at the surface layer. Very often, and you would have heard this, my target market is time poor. Have you not heard, and so my product will fix this time poor problem. Well, everybody has the same amount of time. How we spend it is different to, how I spend it may be different to how you spend it. Why do you have less time for Netflix than I do? And that's what we need to uncover. But people stay at that surface level and go, oh, yes, or, we're
So what would that look like to reframe that if you were digging deeper? Might it look like my target audience spends a lot of time doing X, Y, Z? Is that, and therefore has less or does not prioritize time to do Y? Is that kind of where you'd go with that? Or what would that look like in a way?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I'm really, I wear multiple hats. I'm a CEO. I have, a teenage son and ailing parents. I'm making this stuff up.
Yeah.
And I split my time across, 3 different kinds of key activities each day, and I don't have enough time to be able to, or I don't have the patience or the the relaxing half an hour
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
almost
chit
like
chat
being
time to be
being
able to do
constantly
X.
interrupted, and
That's
it's
right.
potentially a different kind of problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear that. And so also, when you talk about value proposition, do you tend to talk about in terms of large audience groups, or do you use, I've seen two different approaches. One is like, you go with your jobs to be done and just go with a large kind of focus. And some people combine it with personas and really target particular segments. What's your advice in that sort of choice?
From my kind of mental model point of view, how I structure it is, firstly, I need to understand the segment. And the
Yeah.
segment has some demographic characteristics to it. Because for me as a product person, I like to be able to count things, right? I like to be able to say there are 10, 16-year-olds, for example. So I like to start with some segmentation. Then I like to extract, the key characteristics of that segment. Might be, loves to play sport, and it has to be relevant to the solution product that you're selling. And so let's talk about sport. Well, there's 10, 16-year-olds, love to play soccer, and this is how they spend their time, but they can't go to the soccer field. My product, is a sports van that picks up all of these 16-year-olds and takes them from. So I like to always start with the segment so I can count, and I can say, as a business, do I care about the 10 people, or 10 people isn't attractive for me, so therefore I don't really want to service that segment. So segmentation allows me to count. Then I like to talk about personas. And yes, and then in terms of personas, a job to be done is a technique that says this person's trying to, the job to be done when I play soccer is to be able to feel like a superstar.
So you combine them, because I've seen some people counterpose jobs to be done versus persona. It's like, oh, here's the task without the gumph of the backstory. Is some people the way they describe job,
Yes,
but you kind of combine them, yeah?
I do combine them,
Yeah.
but I agree that sometimes we get too carried away with telling the persona story and we make fluff up.
Yeah.
So and I think that is dangerous to make fluff up. So you want to use just the minimal amount of information to really give you the opportunity to empathize with that customer, that situation, to really start to bring up, talking points. Sometimes the job to be done without the context is really cold and may not be, may not give you enough kind of stimulus to have that discussion.
So what I'm hearing is human to be empathetic without going down the rabbit hole of making up all these unconscious biases about their backstory, yeah?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's a balance, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance. And look, there's nothing wrong with combining techniques. Like
I know, we love it.
Our job is not to make the techniques the hero. Our job is to get the insights from these techniques. And so you would try and use whatever methods you have at your disposal to extract the insights so that you can then go and service your customer.
Fantastic.
Very often, sometimes we're so pedantic about making sure that the tool itself is the hero. And that's wrong. The tools are just tools. The hammer is never the hero.
I love that. I think that's a quote worthy of sharing, especially
the picture on the wall is the hero, not the hammer.
Yes, that's a really great reminder. Thank you for that. And look, I could keep geeking out with you about this, but we're running out of time. So is there any last model that you want to sort of draw attention to or share, particularly even ones that of your own? Anything?
Look, we have a little idea pad, and you can probably find it, Brainmates idea pad online, and it's the mini version of a value proposition. And if you have lots of different ideas floating about in your business, you can, pull up this idea pad and start to really ask 4 questions really quickly to figure out how you compare apples with apples.
Oh, fantastic. So it's almost your brainstorming technique for value proposition.
It's that high level idea prioritization technique.
Would you happen to remember the 4 questions? Now I'm curious. I'm going to link to it.
It's very simple. who is this idea for? What problem does it solve? What benefits does it give the buyer / and user, and what benefits does your organization get from delivering it?
So you've got that commercial element, which I don't
Yeah.
often see in value proposition statements. That's interesting.
It's the start of a value proposition statement.
But that
Because
last question, I don't often see that
No.
internal view of it.
No,
Yeah,
that's
right.
just to help that high level prioritization. And in terms of a value proposition, when you're kind of crafting that for your customers, you don't really talk about what you're going to get as a business.
Yeah, but I guess that's your filter. That's almost your opportunity cost up the front. Yeah, nice. It all swings back. Nice. Well, Adrienne, this has been wonderful, and I'm sure I'm going to come back to you another time and probably focus in on a few different models. But for now, thank you so much for your time, and people can follow the links to Brainmates and find out more about Adrienne. Follow her on LinkedIn and Twitter, and see the conferences and offers she has around product. And because you don't just train product managers, do you? You take product management to a whole range of different disciplines too, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. And we run an amazing conference called Leading the Product.
I've seen, yeah, that's one of my FOMOs that I'm wanting to go to still. It's always
so
looking good.
Yeah, last year.
It's an institution in Australia now.
Yeah.
But look, so thank you very much for your time, and we'll be talking again, no doubt. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
See you, Aaron. Bye.